And we are back, and this lag is still happening in the headphones. We are joined by Montreal Infringement Festival founder Donovan King. Don, thank you so much for joining us. This is awesome.
My absolute pleasure.
Yeah, man. He's wearing my favorite year's shirt.
Oh,
it's my favorite too.
Yeah.
That is. At some point, we should take all these old infringement shirts and reprint them, because there's so many cool designs that I didn't get in on.
Right, can't you do them in limited batch orders?
We'll talk about that when we don't have Donovan.
I got lots of ideas.
So, you know, I've been helping coordinate this festival for about 2-3 years now. When you first started the festival, how did you kind of first get that kind of core of volunteers to set everything up?
Well, for us, it was a little bit different. We had been kicked out of the Fringe Festival here in Montreal, which is actually a festival we helped found, but it got taken over with a trademark and a corporate approach. So we already had a team in place, and then there had been other people alienated by this approach who also joined us. And then, of course, you had your local misfits and whatnot as well. And so it was a very countercultural time. It was all done in a neighborhood called the Plateau, which was once upon a time a very artistic neighborhood. Unfortunately, it's been so gentrified now, none of the artists live there anymore, and so it's too bad, you know, but that's what we've been going through here in the city is a hyper gentrification, which means most of the small venues have been closed down, and it's very, very difficult to do this type of grassroots arts anymore in Montreal.
Oh, that's a damn shame.
Yeah.
So now, is the Montreal Infringement Festival still operating, or did it stop within the recent years?
Yeah, it's kind of gone underground. Like a lot of the artists are doing individual infringement projects. A lot of it has to do with what's called Truth and Reconciliation in Canada, which is an attempt to reconcile colonization, which is very hard to do, of course. So there's been a lot of that, but there's also been another subcomponent whereby we've tried to find a way to pay artists union-based wages on a regular basis. And that's something that's always been absent in Montreal. We've got mostly these types of festivals like today's Fringe, which actually charges the artist to pay to play. And so we wanted to try to reverse that trend. And we found out a way to do it, and it's actually through theatrical guiding tours. And so haunted walks and things like that, where we embed all sorts of political messages. But in terms of the original festival format, we can't really do that anymore because of all of this gentrification. It's pretty much wrecked the city's culture. And it's also a lack of support from local arts organizations who are all sort of tied into this corporate formula whereby they're taking government grants, corporate sponsorships, they're naming festivals after corporations. And it's a very small minority of people making money off of this. It's often the arts administrators instead of the artists who are getting ahead. And, it's sort of a warning to any city that's undergoing this. I know Buffalo is right now,
definitely.
Allentown certainly isn't the same as what it used to be when the fest started in 2005. I mean, I've seen so many places scatter away from Allentown. They couldn't afford it anymore. Not only artists, but also venues like Rust Belt Books and things like that. So it's tricky to kind of hold it together. But at the end of the day, I think we need like systemic change in terms of how the arts works. Otherwise, we're going to get crushed.
No, I agree with that, and that is a concern I think we have here in Buffalo. And I think one of the things I've always looked at as far as, musicians and housing and being able to live downtown and stuff is that it was $5 to get in a show 25 years ago. It's $5 to get in a lot of shows now. And when you have the venues even taking some of that money from you, like, it's getting harder and harder every year, every time, the dollar's worth a little less for these musicians to keep on going, and I think that's a damn shame.
Yeah.
So you're saying in a way that you're doing some kind of a co-op artistry with your improv guided tour theater you have a collective of people who are pooling.
Yeah, and so in a nutshell, we have a few different divisions. One of them is more professional in terms of it's like a business model, and that employs actors to pay them union-based wages. But we also have a more activist model, which is interesting because in Montreal, it's actually illegal to do a guided tour unless you do this course, right? And so I actually
mostly
did
love Canadians, but that sounds like stupid.
yeah, and so it's a bit different with the haunted tours because those are actors, and a regular tour guide cannot do that. They cannot say project their voice or tell a story well or whatever. And so the other division is we're doing these sort of activist anti-colonial tours, but because these are illegal unless you have this permit, we're stirring up a lot of shit at the city hall, and we're saying, well, why aren't Indigenous people allowed to give a guided tour on their own unceded territory of Jojage? This is the Mohawk people. And so we're getting them involved as well at places like Ganawagi Tourism, and suddenly all of these questions are appearing over the city, and their legal departments are in full drive trying to sort this out, and the media's going and whatnot. And so again, it's it's a different type of approach we're taking, but the goal of it is systemic change. We don't want these restrictions in place for anyone. I mean, any artist should be allowed to give a guided tour. That's the oldest art form in the world.
Sure, especially when you talk
to
about
think
those
that
native
it's
cultures and storytelling, right?
Yeah, and to think it's illegal for an Indigenous person to give a tour of their own territory just shows how messed up the system is here. It's still very much rooted in colonialism, and we've got a lot of these sort of nasty laws still in place that have to go. And so, that's another approach that we're taking in addition to the more professional one. But, there's a lot going on, but again, it's very much underground. The corporate fringe has been kind of gaslighting us ever since we started the infringement in 2004. And eventually it sort of wears you down, and you're lucky in that you don't have this type of corporate enemy in your city, not yet. I mean, it's slowly encroaching in. You've got one in Rochester already started up.
Yep.
But once it comes in, like, watch your backs, I mean, these guys are nasty.
Oh, I want to fight the corporations. Bring them on.
Fight the system.
Yeah. Oh man, that sucks. That's ridiculous. So, for closing ceremonies, we're going to be airing your your censored thesis from,
yes,
I think, the very first Infringement Festival. Do you want to kind of tell us a little bit about that? Why was it censored in the first place?
Well, when I was at the University of Calgary studying a thesis in the late, 1999 actually, and I wanted to do radical theater, the same type of stuff that makes up the infringement. And they wanted me to direct, sort of classic theater for a subscriber audience. And so this is where we ran into some problems. And they wanted to, on the one hand, teach me all of these amazing theories of things like post-colonialism and feminism and, all of these different approaches to the theater, but they did not want me to apply them in any way. And so this is where it all blew up. And, eventually I left the campus sort of dejected. I'd done the coursework and I was waiting to get a thesis proposal, but then Car Stories, which I was trying to make the proposal, got deliberately kicked out of the Fringe Festival, the corporate one, by challenging their corporate sponsor, which also happened to be the corporate media. And so, essentially the dean, when he heard about this, he says, Donovan's not allowed to do any more theater on the campus. He's not allowed to communicate with anyone unless it's in a written letter. And so when I went to appeal this, I actually had to fly back to Calgary. I actually had to wear a typewriter around my neck just so I could type a professional letter to communicate with people, because, like, according to the dean, I wasn't even allowed to speak, or do hand gestures or anything like that, And so this is the type of arts I love. It's culture jamming. You basically stick a big stick into the spokes of some oppressive system, and you see it all start coming apart. And of course, you take major injuries in the process. But at the end of the day, if you look at the University of Calgary's website, they just announced last year that I'm a thought leader and, an artist leader in the field and all this blah, blah, blah. That's very positive on their alumni site. And also their Department of Drama that put me through this hell eventually got deconstructed and reintegrated into a more activist performing arts department that includes music and other forms of art as well, dance, etc. And so, a project like this may have taken 20 years, and I took a bruising, but that's how you bust a systemic oppressive system. And we're trying to do the exact same thing with the infringement, and it's this one could take a long, long time if what's keeping up in Edinburgh. They made a World Fringe Congress whereby they're trying to put every fringe in a corporate model, and so we got censored from them as well.
Jesus.
And so it's a huge problem. But what makes me feel positive is in today's day and age, with this enormous explosion of activism after George Floyd's death, we're seeing demands from the most oppressed people, the Black people, the Indigenous people, people of color. We're probably going to hear mental illness coming up more in the future because it's often tied into that. And so I think maybe the infringement might be able to spark into something bigger once again, but these are the factors we're playing with in a globalized world. It's a very interesting and disturbing time for sure.
Definitely. Oh, let's talk about something happier.
It's so weird to have your school gratify and incentivize your work as an afterthought, but not really fuel you and give you any type of a leverage as you're trying to create the change,
Yeah. So what's the weirdest thing you've seen at an infringement festival?
Yeah.
That's a great question. Okay, now when we first started the infringement, in Buffalo, we were invited by Kurt Schneiderman, who'd set it up, and he met us at the Toronto Fringe, and he wanted a fringe, but it was illegal because of a trademark in New York. And so I said, why don't you start an infringement? And so that's why you guys have this amazing infringement.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
But that first year we were there, we actually did synchronized swimming in the Fountain of Days Park. And we have these wonderful photos where all these people are moving in unison. And, eventually they cracked down on that. I think they put a fence around the fountain or something. Mm-hmm. But it was that type of spirit of we're just going to do the craziest things on a whim. We're going to improvise. We're going to live life to the full. To me, that's what the infringement is. And that's when I go to Buffalo, I love it. I'm always treated with the best hospitality I've ever had in my life, and put up in a mansion sometimes, old Wonder Moth, or they'll set up a tent for me.
You were in a fancy gazebo last year, man.
Yeah, and so it's always this incredible hospitality, but also this incredible community. And everywhere I go, I know people. And it's not the sad thing is in Montreal's art scene, it's not like that at all. I avoid a lot of these places because of the poisoning of the community by the fringe. I prefer to work just sort of privately in these small areas doing these tours or these different events or things like that. And so you guys have nailed this idea of what it means to be a real community, and with no corporate interference, with no one an arts administrator at the top with an agenda to pad their pockets or whatever, but it's artist run. It is gorgeous. This to me is real culture, and I can't believe that you've taken this idea I had that kind of never really worked here as much as we would have liked, and you've blossomed it into what it really should be. And hopefully that idea is going to spread to other cities around the world, because if you have a community And if they're willing to work hard on behalf of those artists, you know, and if they're also intertwined, you've got a great solution right there to this, you know, this blasé corporate monoculture that's everywhere. And it's, you know, it's just so exciting to go to a space like that because it really barely exists anywhere anymore.
Yeah. One of the things that kind of gets me a little excited was I actually went to the Montreal Infringement Festival page website. You have instructions on how to start an infringement festival in there.
Nice.
And
yeah,
I think that's great because when Cassidy and I actually go to colleges sometimes to try and get volunteers, try to find people who need that kind of experience when they get out of college. And I completely lost my train of thought. What was I talking about?
Starting your own infringement festival.
Oh,
the
so,
how-to.
Like, when I go to Fredonia and talk to students there, they're not just Buffalo. A lot of them aren't Buffalo. Like, one of our best infringement interns is doing everything from New York City. Mm-hmm. So I actually have them asking me about how can I do this in my town when I leave for the summer. And now that I found that there, I think that's a fantastic tool for helping spread that. And I hope that's something that we can all work together to try and do, is develop a few of these in different places. Because, you know, I'm reaching these music students and they understand. I mean, when you're that young, you understand the idea of just free, expressive art, doing what you want.
Well, and you don't want the adult in the room to say no.
Exactly.
We can't do this because we're Starbucks now, or whatever it is, you know. And the idea of saying, I've got my own space, I've got my own idea, and not only that, but I've got this community rallying behind me to make this event possible. I think that that's really what it takes.
It's that interdependence.
So yeah, thanks. Really take the ball.
Yeah.
So we asked you what the weirdest proposal you've seen. What was the most difficult one to pull off that you've had to participate in?
Ooh, for me personally.
Yeah.
Well, basically in Montreal, when we did Car Stories originally, we had a lot of problems. And I'm talking about neighbors who were complaining about the actors honking their horns.
For those who don't know, what is Car Stories?
Well, it's basically theater in cars. And so you've got 3 spectators in the back and 2 actors in the front. And so there's many different models. You know, the original one, we had 4 different cars and 4 different sets of actors. You know, but you can sort of change it a little bit if you want. In Buffalo, sometimes you've had up to 10 people on the show just because it was so in demand. You would peek through the windows to see what was happening. But, I mean, that year we first did it in Montreal. The police arrived one time when there was a scene, you know, theoretically at the border, right? And so someone was dressed as an officer and had a fake gun, and it was just like a total shit show. You know, I had to break the character and run out and try to explain to the cops what was going on. It was crazy. But, you know, we've had a lot of crazy experiences with Car Stories because it does kind of blend theater and reality. If you're in the show, you know you're in a piece of theater, but if you're just walking down the street and witness this,
that's the best part.
It might seem very real to you. In another case, in Allentown, I was playing a real estate broker and talking about how we're going to demolish all of these homes on, what's the street, the one Mike lives on?
College Street.
College Street, yes. I was going down and explaining to the clients or the guests of the show how we're going to demolish all of this and build condos here. You know, and some of the residents actually came out and started like challenging me, and they're like, "That's never going to happen here." And I'm like, "The writing's on the wall, you know. Your home's going to be bought out within the next 2 years." And so it's like, that's why I love Car Stories. It just creates this incredible zone that's it's like it's what Derrida calls la différence, you know. So it's both theater and reality, but it's neither theater nor reality at the same time. Just like a zombie is both alive and dead, and yet it's neither alive nor dead. And so it's kind of this disturbing, interesting space. But that's the type of space I love to work in. It's to me the most exciting space, and that's the culture jamming space where, You know, the artists go into reality directly and start playing with it to cause some type of reflection. And so, you know, that's sort of the basis of the work at its root, really.
It's wholly creative and admirable to do that type of an improv experience theater. I loved when I participated in Car Stories with you, not knowing what the hell I was signing up for. You know what I mean? And the truth is, like, I'm sure as the one guiding the theater experience, half of the time you don't really know what that unique jaunt through the car stories or whatever that 15, 20 minutes is going to look like for you, because you can have these neighbors coming out thinking, oh, you're going to knock down my neighborhood, whatever it is. But I wish almost that we could have that type of an experience as an escape room theater venue. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But again, would you have corporate sponsorship to do this? Would you be allowed in the neighborhood to establish that type of an outside of the box, you know, no. You got to create it. You got to build it on your own. So kudos. I think it's great.
Cheers.
Where are we?
All right. We're out of time.
We're out of time.
Yes. I haven't mentioned this once, and I really should have. At 8:30, the Living Dead Girls are going to have their podcast playing right after this.
Yeah.
So, Donovan, I'd love to talk to you for like another hour, but time.
And it's sad not to have you here in Buffalo for the Infringement Festival this year. I hope that for next year's sake we get to see you here in
I'll
LA.
be there for sure. I'm shattered that the border is still closed. I mean, my mother lives right across the border in Malone, New York. I can't even visit her, so.
We're not allowed, yeah. How awful.
Yeah, so, but yeah, next year, let's hope, knock on wood, that this pandemic is cleared 100% and we can, like, go for it, you know?
Yeah.
Thanks for representing and wearing that cool shirt, too.
I love this shirt. It's my
a good
favorite
shirt.
one.
Well, Donovan, thanks for coming on. We really, really appreciate it. And honestly, just, you know, for me, I've done a lot of the heavy lifting this year. And sometimes you don't get a lot of feedback from people, but your support has really meant a lot to me during kind of the rough time we've been having this season. So I really just wanted to thank you for that. And yeah, man, thanks for coming on.
Hey, my pleasure. I've always got your guys' back. Never forget that.
We got your back. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right, Lou, what are we playing next?